Sam is great at making funhouse pictures. I mean, it's like going to a funhouse. You laugh, and then you get scared. And then you laugh, and then you get scared.
Evil Dead 2 really seems to have shown that it has legs. That's the movie that broke the boundaries.
Evil Dead 2, it stands alone as straight entertainment, great shtick, and a little scare factor.
You know this son of a bitch!
I never knew it would have this kind of a cultural impact, and it certainly does.
We'll throw him in there.
Evil Dead 2 represented going back to our comfort spot. And we also were better filmmakers at that point. So it was actually not a horrible experience.
I hope you rot down there.
Now, after the first Evil Dead came out in '82 overseas, '83 domestically, we were on to other stuff. We wanted to do something completely different because it was a very, we enjoyed the genre, but I wouldn't call us horror geeks at that time. We made a horror film because it was a good way to get your foot in the door.
People don't quite realize that, we shot the movie in '79, '80, premiered it in '81, and it didn't come out till '83. So there's years in there of sitting around those offices in Ferndale going,
Well, we wanted, to do other stories. So Crime Wave was the next movie that we did, the Coen brothers, the ill-fated Crime Wave.
And as Bruce has said, it was just the continuation of the Evil Dead shoot, of how miserable can this all be.
This was the first studio thing. We went from $2.5 million up to $4 million. Big cost overrun. That's almost double. That's where people get fired.
I really felt badly because Sam, Rob, and Bruce were really just having a bad go of it with the studio and stuff. The Hollywood crew basically said, "No, you can't use Bruce." But the vehicle was written for Bruce, should have starred Bruce.
And the film was re-edited, and the studio got involved, and we lost control of it. And it was a huge learning curve. And after that Bond, we were like, well, this isn't good.
And those guys thought their career had ended already. And the only thing at that point that seemed logical was Evil Dead 2, and Sam was adamantly against it. So ostensibly, Sam, Bruce, and Rob hired Scott and I to make Evil Dead 2, and they were going to executive produce. And I wrote a draft of Evil Dead 2 that has absolutely nothing to do with what became Evil Dead 2. Anyway, nobody liked it, and they didn't really want to do it anyway. And when it looked like they were not going to get another movie, they were able to get to Dino De Laurentiis and pitch him the idea of Evil Dead 2, and he went for it.
There's a Stephen King influence on this whole thing, which is Stephen King made Evil Dead in a way because he did that interview in Twilight Zone magazine. He loved it so much, he did that glowing piece about it. So he's down in North Carolina doing Maximum Overdrive as a director, right? And there's a second AD who was on the second unit shoot of Crime Wave, and they're having lunch. And Sam's name gets brought up, right? And so he goes to Dino and says, you should actually do the sequel to Evil Dead.
Dino De Laurentiis jumped in after he saw the sales of Evil Dead 1, because Dino is all about the foreign market. And so he saw those numbers, and we had a deal. We had languished. We were talking with Coca-Cola was thinking of getting into the movie business, you know, NBC Pictures, things like that. And so we dabbled with that, but nothing was coming of that. Dino De Laurentiis, we had a meeting with him. We had a deal in 15 minutes.
When Evil Dead 2 came along, they did everything within their power to kind of, and to get back to the egg. Go, okay, let's do Evil Dead 2. Let's go back to our horror roots. Now, ironically, Evil Dead 2 has a lot of comedy in it, which is weird, but when Sam Raimi pitched me my involvement in the film, I'm going to get you to write it, I had done a short film called Attack of the Helping Hand. This is a short film of the hamburger helper attacking the housewife. But in that, Sam Raimi plays the milkman, and the helping hand's all over the place. Of course, it gives her the finger. It was really cool. Sam goes, I'm going to take that short. It's going to be Attack of the Helping Hand meets Evil Dead. And I go, oh, I totally get the movie you're making. Okay, cool.
Those guys were great together. We basically hear them just laughing down at the end of the hallway. We had an office in Ferndale, Michigan, former dentist's office. And we knew that these guys got so distracted so easily, we had to sequester them and try and keep the gags away and the props and the sight gags, and it didn't matter. We would just hear laughter, laughter, laughter. We're like, Rob Tapert and I were like, are those guys writing? Are they writing anything? It just took the script into an inventive place, and Scott also has a very demented sense of humor and very gaggy sense of humor. So you get this combination of raw horror and raw gags.
So what's this place like?
Well, it's a little run down, but it's right up in the mountains.
The tricky thing with, you know, sequels that were never planned, they were never planned. So you don't know how to tie these together. You know, we didn't know we were going to do another Evil Dead. Had no idea whatsoever.
See, the problem with 2 was everybody's dead in the first one, so how do you get them back? How do you get another group of people back?
You know, so I think we have to resurrect Ash, even though he's killed in the first Evil Dead. He's dead. The evil entity got him. So we decided he'd just beat him up a little bit.
But we couldn't reuse the footage, so that was really frustrating to do a recap on that. So it was re-envisioned and recreated in that sense.
We couldn't get the rights to the footage from Evil Dead for Evil Dead 2. It was 2 different companies. And they were like, well, let's just pretend that the first one didn't happen. The funny thing is that because of the way the recap went, people thought that Ash was stupid enough to go back to the cabin with new friends.
There were budget considerations, because I was the one that wanted to take it out of the cabin. Just to be different, you know? Anyway, things change and everything, but you know, you try to do it, but Rob and Bruce were like, keep it in the house.
But we had to figure it out. We cast people right away. We wanted to shoot somewhere that was warm. We found a place that was really warm, Wadesboro, North Carolina.
Because the year before, The Color Purple had been there. So there had been a precedent for a movie shot. So that's why we ended up down there.
And we had to deal with the small town politics of rural America. You know, you just dealt with Spielberg. That's the Cadillac. We're like a Chevy Vega, like a Chevy Nova. So we can't pay this much and this. So we had to make all kinds of deals with that. And then we found out that before we started shooting the movie, it was already in profit. They had made a sale to HBO, and they sold to Foreign, where Rob Tapert came on the set specifically one day and went, well, we're in profit. It put us beyond the budget that we had. And we really wanted to fix the production problems that we had on Crime Wave. And then I think after the second one did well, I'm sure there were other miserable failures, and we decided to go to Army of Darkness.
All right, Bruce, say hello. This is Evil Dead 2, guys. Flashback. You bastard.
Haven't I been doing this somewhere before? Where?
I think Bruce Campbell's a great guy. You know, I think he's a really fantastic actor. He totally delivers every time he does something, and he's just a really good person. You know, very generous, very, very sweet, and really, really, really funny.
I've had the opportunity to work with Bruce Campbell over the years on other projects as well. That was the first time I'd worked with him on Evil Dead 2. Sam always said that the hero had to be punished. You know, he had to go through hell. Kind of like Die Hard, you know, what makes it great is he gets crap kicked out of him through the whole movie.
Bruce was game for anything that Sam could throw at him, and Sam threw everything at him he could. As they were growing up together, I don't know if maybe Bruce dated somebody that Sam liked, but Sam has had it out for him creatively in a very mischievous way.
Got it.
Any opportunity to torture Bruce, Sam would take within a second.
Okay, now attack Bruce wildly. And beat him once. And go for it again. Higher. Hold it, Dave. Leave it there for a while.
Sam would always like call him, you know, you big baby, and you know, and you can't take it. Oh, you're too hot, huh?
Bruce is an inspiring guy to work with because you're watching him get annihilated through any amount of physical and mental breakdowns, and you know, you feel like you want to gripe about something. You know, he's Sergeant Rock who's taking bullets in his face. You know, you go, well, I guess because I got a hangnail, I probably should shut up. So
the stunt double was not used very much. John Casino was my stunt guy, very good stunt guy, who doubled me for about 15 years on Briscoe County Jr., stuff like that. And he would do things like a stair fall. So I'm like, nah, it's probably not a good idea to go head first on that. I think I'm going to let John do that. And I did most of everything else in the movie.
I remember shooting the scene in the kitchen where Bruce is breaking the dishes over his head and the evil hand and flips himself. And it was the most amazing thing I'd ever seen.
And he'd do it over and over again, and we're like going, he's going to get hurt, you know, and he just enjoyed it. I mean, he had a great time doing it.
He was definitely tortured. He was incredibly disciplined, though. He would be up every morning. He pumped iron before the shoot because he kept himself in impeccable shape. He was a Puritan. He had a Spartan diet, drank a lot of water. Of course, he looked like $1 million. And he was a ham. He was just a ham. And he was good to work off of. He had a lot of energy.
Now!
I think Sam tormented Ted almost a little bit more. I mean, literally, it's like, okay, you're my little brother, you're gonna be in this movie, so you're just gonna do whatever I say.
when Evil Dead 2 came out, I was definitely aware of all of the demands that were required of me to be in the suit, to be hung by a harness, to be blind. And I didn't care because I was 20. And when you're 20, you know, you can have people throw golf balls at your face, you know, from a driving range, and it really doesn't matter. You'll be happy to have that happen to you.
And action.
That thing in the cellar is not my mother.
Sam was looking for what he called a southern wildcat, and I'm from the South. And so this agent said, "Would you like to read?" I said, "Sure." Sam read me for the part, and he said, "Great, I love you." So I said, "Well, while I'm here, can I read for the lead?" And he said, "No, I really like you for this part. I think you're perfect." I said, "Come on, I'm here. Let me read." So he gave me the sides for Annie, and I read, and he went, I like that. And then he said, "I want to hear you scream." I said, "Okay." And I just let it rip.
I don't know that Sarah knew what she was getting into. I don't know that anybody knew what they were getting into. But she was picked because she had a great scream, very piercing scream, and she seemed game.
I liked the fact that she was a professional woman. You know, in a horror movie, that's a rare commodity. And the way I conceptualized her is I thought of her as, like, in some ways the ultimate Girl Scout, because she was that. But sort of the interior track I had was that I was the son my father never had. And so I really had to come through for him. And that's how I played it. My oldest daughter then was just 18 months old. And my husband was a professor, so they could come and be with me during the shoot. It was in the summertime, and it was 9 weeks.
She had young children at the time. I had young children, and what was funny to watch was the difference of how we dealt with our kids making a movie like that. Because what I told my daughter, Rebecca, who was young at the time, was I said, look, Ted's in a big pig suit. And here comes Ted. Look, see the pig suit? Sarah Berry didn't really lay the groundwork for her kids. Her kids saw Ted Raimi and freaked out. They had to remove the two from each other. You know, it was just a disaster.
Sarah had some like really emotional horror movie scenes. So she was really sweet to work with. And I think she spent a lot of her time like preparing for this next big moment where she had to emote in some way.
And now!
She'd had some pretty severe knee injuries from her dancing career. And I remember just feeling so horrible for her because you could see this big scars on her legs, and she had to drag my big, fat, heavy butt all the way across that cabin with the dagger sticking out of my chest.
I remember 17 takes of that. And he was a heavy guy.
And at the time, I weighed over 200 pounds.
I had worked myself up into such a place. And then with each take, got more and more and more, you know, intense for me. But it was exhausting.
I felt so bad for her, but very good actress, fun to work with, very giving.
And action! Bobby Joe! Bobby Joe!
Bobby Joe! Bobby Joe! Where are you, girl?
Danny Hicks has this blue-collar vibe like very few actors can pull off.
That's right.
In Evil Dead 2, he's so much fun to watch.
I loved playing Jake in Evil Dead 2, just because it just gave me a chance. Well, first of all, it was my first feature film, and I got to be incredibly unattractive, which is always fun to ugly up. Part of the reason I got the role is when I auditioned for it, I remember Sam Raimi looking at me and saying, I can't believe it, an actor without an ego, you know, because I looked so awful. I'd gotten up that morning and went outside and literally combed my hair with grease from the engine compartment.
He came into the audition and he was okay, but then he goes, well, do you want to see without my teeth? And we were like, what? He just went, thump. He pulled out a whole bridge at the front of his teeth and 4 teeth just disappeared. We're like, that's perfect. You know, and so he basically got the part on the spot. And Danny's just one of these great, bigger-than-life characters who's got crazy near-death stories.
Action!
The thing that I came closest to not surviving is my death scene when Henrietta chews me up down in the cellar, because they pumped 55 gallons of fake blood in something like 3.5 seconds. And I was hanging upside down from a trapeze. And on the first take, the hose wasn't positioned. And instead of squirting out the door, it hit the door and came right back in my face. So within 3.5 seconds, I had 55 gallons of blood forced up my nose. So I almost choked to death. And then, of course, we had to do it again.
His performance is so powerful in that movie. It's really something to see. I mean, I know I sound like I'm talking about some Academy Award guy, but if there was an Academy Award, you know, for crazy hillbillies, he'd be the winner, hands down.
I mean, I don't know how much movie acting he had done, but he was really an old pro. He was in character, he was ready for every shot, he was inventive with what he wanted to do, you know, he really worked every shot. He was fabulous to work with.
Danny and I became buddies on the movie. I haven't seen him in a long time, wonder what he's doing. But we became friends on the movie, and we had our no shortage of brews together and chatted together and really got a sense of what this was going to be about. So he was a really, really cool guy.
Danny Hicks had a great time because he's just kind of that kind of guy. He's like, sure beats working for a living, you know?
Doing a feature film is what I decided, that's what I want to do. I want to do feature films. I don't want to do anything else. And that's because of the whole experience with Evil Dead 2.
And he's just stayed a good friend, and he's been in just about every one of our movies ever since.
358, take one. And Cassie, hands up. Start. And action.
Bobby Joe was indeed one of the first characters I played. It was actually the first movie that I've done, and pretty much the only feature film I've ever done. I had just started working with a theatrical agent who submitted me for this, and I thought, a horror film? I know, Jamie Lee Curtis started her career there. I'm like, well, that would be great. Thinking I wasn't going to get it.
Cassie had to be, she had to eat the eyeball fly ball. I mean, she got her same introduction to Sam Raimi. Like, you want me to do what?
Cassie, I flew to North Carolina with, I think. I think we were both living in LA, both got the job, and I think we were kindred spirits in a way, both going, what is this? What are we getting ourselves into here? What do you think this is all about? What is this movie? It reads kind of weird. Have you read the script? Have you read the script? So we had a long chat on the way there, and we spent some time together. She was really sweet, and I could tell she was driven. She seemed to be a driven actress and somebody who knew where she was going in her career.
I knew that this was going to be a really wonderful opportunity for me to really have the whole movie experience. I love to be on the set, try to learn stuff. So back when the house became possessed and everybody was laughing, I said, I'll lay behind the sofa and move the cushions. And so I did that.
Cassie and I were sort of, obviously cast to sort of spar with each other in the movie. And I tried very much to stay as much in character as I could on the set. And so we kind of kept our distance from each other on the set. And she was much lighter. She was very bubbly and light and kind of true to the character in that way.
Just a true sweetheart. And she probably helped me with the accent a little bit because she's a Texas girl.
But I remember thinking, it says I have to chew tobacco. I'm like, really? Okay, so what they did is they put a brownie. So that when you spit, it still had that brown, icky look.
She's just a kind of a good girl. She didn't really fit in that whole environment. I think she was ready for soap operas by the time we were done. She went literally from Evil Dead 2 to One Life to Live. I mean, what a crazy transition.
And I've been working ever since, so thank you.
I had not seen the first Evil Dead, so I wasn't aware of what Evil Dead 2 was all about. So the thing for me about this movie was the audition. Because when you go to an audition as an actor, you don't get the entire script. You get the sides, you get a couple of pages. And there was a scene, I think, at the cabin. And then he turns into a Kandarian demon, and I had not ever experienced that before. Okay, let's go back to our Stanislavski training here a little bit. Go back to our sense memory here, Kandarian demon. And I had to figure out what the hell to do with this at this audition. All I remember is that I think, to this day, I think I recall making the ugliest face in the history of time, the most demonic face I've ever made in my life, and just turned into the demon. And just, I don't know, from when I was a kid, I had eyebrows that could go up higher than Nicholson's. When I finally got the call from the agent, I was like, what the hell did you do? They want to see you again for the demon role or something like that. When I met the guys who actually did the makeup for it, they said, basically, dude, that was pretty cool. We're gonna model Evil Ed's makeup after that guy that you had become in the audition.
What I remember the most about Rick is he was a very astute businessman. And he said to me after the shoot was over, Sarah, you should take every dime you've made on this film, and it wasn't a lot, but take every dime and hire a PR person and just blitz yourself with PR. He was so smart. So I remember him being very canny in that way.
Oh, he was great. And he's been on like the Home Shopping Network ever since, man. That guy's everywhere. I don't know. And Sarah Berry. Oh, all those people are awesome. I mean, really, it's just like, it was just really a cool time. Terrific actors, a lot of fun.
And so that was our motley crew. They were pretty good troopers.
If I'm not mistaken, there was a little rider in the contract that my agent was trying to figure out. And it said something to the effect of, if you fall, break your neck, lose an eye, or sever an arm, you're on your own. It turned out to be eventful, yes, in a lot of ways.
We actually beat each other up pretty good in that show. Ted broke my nose. He had to reach up and grab my face, and he misjudged it by about 3 inches. So when he reached up to grab me, snap went the nose. When I attacked Bruce Campbell, I knocked him down and then hit him with both of my fists across his face, and I slipped and dropped down about 1 inch. I knocked all of his front teeth loose. But they actually ended up using that tape. It looked real, because it was.
Everybody just wanted to do the best that they could, but we were young and green, and Sam was very patient with us.
It also was like really being in the trenches. I mean, you had to act almost like being in warfare. And so I felt like I learned so much in the process. I sort of felt like if I could do that film, I could do any film.
You did it, kid.
When we made the first Evil Dead, it was primitive. So they were putting plaster of Paris on actors' faces, pulling out eyelashes because they hadn't put Vaseline on there. I mean, we did everything wrong. But by the time Evil Dead 2 came around, the techniques were better.
I was just blown away by Evil Dead. And when I read that they're going to do a sequel, I made definite plans of how to get on board. I didn't know who to write to, so I wrote to Irwin Shapiro, the distributor of the film, in New York, and asked if he'd forward a letter to Sam Raimi for me. He said, of course. So I wrote a letter. I had finished From Beyond and A Nightmare on Elm Street 2, and included a lot of photographs, and sent it off with good faith. And about 6 months later, I think, the phone rang, and it was Sam, and he called and said, I want you to do Evil Dead 2.
The K&B guys came to our attention through Mark Sjostrom. It was his shop, and the K&B guys worked under him.
I had met Mark and worked on From Beyond, so we were really tight, really good friends. Had a house with Bob Kurtzman and Howard Berger, so we all lived together.
You know, it was a bunch of guys with sleeping bags on the floor, and all we did was sculpt in the garage out back behind the shop every night after we got off work on our own stuff, you know, to kind of improve our portfolios.
I had seen Evil Dead 1, and we were just talking about it, and it was sort of like this fantasy of like, wow, wouldn't it be cool if we could work on Evil Dead 2? And then literally a couple years later, I was working on it. So ironically, it was kind of a dream project.
We were very excited, you know, at the shop. Like, wow, Sam Raimi and da-da-da. You know, we get to meet Bruce Campbell and Rob Tappert and, you know, Ted Raimi, and this is just going to be great, you know.
Mark Sjostrom was a relatively small studio. I mean, he had a small facility in South Pasadena.
My whole commitment to Evil Dead was 6 months, pretty much 7 days a week, but our prep time was a solid 12 weeks. I was just overwhelmed almost at the sheer number of makeup effects. I think out of approximately 750 shots in the film, there was about 105 that were makeup effects, something like that.
We started in March, and they had done some sketches and some design stuff already, and I sort of coordinated the show for Mark.
Shannon! Greg! Marky! Oh, God. I love you guys. You're crazy.
Hi, Mark.
How you doing? Greg.
Aaron.
This is Evil Dead Tape 1, Part 1, Scene 1, action.
The crew was myself, Shannon Shea, Greg Nicotero, Bob Kurtzman, Mike Tursick, and Aaron Sims. So it was a very small crew.
Everybody did a little bit of everything. You know, we did everything from, you know, everybody designed something, everybody basically sculpted, you know, did molds and casting and even foam latex. You know, everybody in the shop would just have like their characters they were working on and just complete it from beginning to end.
Excellent.
And Mark said, what do you want to do? And I said, well, I want to do all Bruce Campbell's makeups. And he went, okay, that sounds great. So I did all Bruce's makeups, which were his evil Ash makeups, and then his, we called it the Jekyll Hyde makeup, and the evil hand, and just a ton of stuff.
And then we made dummies of a lot of the actors. We did a couple head casts of Bruce and different expressions so that we could make different bodies of him to drag through the set and throw through puddles. And the insanity that became Evil Dead 2.
No, it's all top secret. No, all top secret. No, you can't see it.
My first assignment was Evil Ed. I mean, I kind of knew that was what I was going to do. And I remember Mark saying, oh, they want this, they want him to have a big mouth. And of course, the idea of Fright Night came to mind, the character Amy that Steve Johnson did. But the idea was just to have this kind of big shark mouth. And the other thing I thought would be great was to actually have teeth on the roof of his mouth. So it would be teeth, 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 and then teeth. So really, it would be very difficult to kind of see where the teeth ended. Rick came in and we did a live cast of him, and I remember showing Rick the drawing, and he was kind of like, huh? We started like holding up these appliances, and I remember giving him his teeth and saying, okay, you gotta put these teeth in. He looked at him and he put them in, and he's like, I can't close my mouth. So you don't have to close your mouth. You'll be roaring the entire time. Yeah, I can't, ha ha ha. I was like, you'll be fine, you'll be fine. So we put him all in the makeup and we're doing all this, and then the drool starts. Sam's going, great, I love it. All this drool's pouring out of his mouth. It was just, it was just the nature of just having these teeth in his mouth that he could never close his mouth.
As we were prepping the show, we would test things, and I remember meeting Sam for the first time. We had a bunch of test makeups in LA.
Can you expand that a little bit? Sure. I needed a little less subtle.
Right. Okay.
We shot everything. We shot every camera test. We shot every sculpture. We made our own little movies, running through the shop.
Howard! Go! Darren! Shannon! Mike! Turn!
The real challenges that I remember were all those evil tree puppets. And when I had gotten there, they'd all been sculpted and molded, but by that time, it was the beginning of the summer out here in LA, and we had a lot of stuff to do in a very short amount of time, and it was just trying to get all that stuff finished and shipped to North Carolina, because obviously they had already started shooting.
This is it, guys. Evil Dead prep is over. Yay!
Welcome to North Carolina.
We have returned. This is the shop.
This is it.
Wadesboro, North Carolina was one of the biggest dumps I'd ever been to. It was a very, very strange place.
Much as I like North Carolina, it is in the middle of nowhere. It's muggy, it's humid, there's insects everywhere. And it was the height of summer, so it was hotter than hell.
There was nothing there, in Wadesboro. There was literally nothing there.
We found a laundromat, and it was this real junkety laundromat, and washing our clothes, and I'm looking around, and I noticed that we're the only two white guys in there. Everybody else is black. And I'm going, oh, all right. And this woman comes over to us and is like, you boys shouldn't be here. This is the black laundromat. Like, is that a problem? Like, no, the white laundromat's over there. And we're like, okay, I think that means we get the hell out of here. And we packed up our stuff and went to this beautiful laundromat, that had air conditioning and video games and concession stands. I was like, wow, this place is really a trip, And it's one of the things we found a lot of. Like, there was a restaurant and it was divided. There was segregation in this restaurant. And even at the movie theater, there's a white entrance and a black entrance. Very strange. This is 1986.
What was interesting about it was they had taken over this whole school complex.
And it was very well set up. They had the old school administration, the principal's office, was the production manager's office or something.
Hi, Robert.
Hello, Greg. Welcome to my office. Here at Renaissance Motion Pictures.
Dun, 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 dun.
We ended up having the old science lab, which was our workshop, and we would always write stuff on the blackboards, quote of the day, and all our goofy stuff. But everybody sort of had all their own rooms, and in the gymnasium they built the set. They actually built it in 2 stories.
The whole show itself was grueling and very demanding, and every makeup or every effect had its own set of demands and challenges. So it was a matter of pulling off one after the other.
There's a lot of things we just pulled out of our ass, really. I mean, that's what you did in the 80s. And you're like, well, I guess this is going to work.
The first effect we shot, I believe, was when Ash, his hand drags him across the floor, and he's sort of semi-conscious, then he stabs his hand. So I made sure to test and retest this hand, this gelatin hand, to make sure it worked, it was going to bleed, etc. because you want to make a good impression. Bruce gets ready, we arrange the cues, and he stabbed the hand and it bled on cue beautifully. And Bruce, not just being an actor, but one of the producers, looked at the hand and looked at the camera and goes, "By God, that sucker worked." And I'm like, phew.
My makeup averaged between an hour and a half and probably 3 hours just every day.
Never really being in that world where they had to put prosthetics on and do whatever. I was a little claustrophobic, so it was all a wonderful learning experience for me.
You're taking something and gluing it to your skin and then ripping it off your skin. It's no big deal. Just ripping it off, starting here, all the way around, here, under the eyes. And just, it's kind of like the Mission Impossible thing, only it's really ripping the glue right off your face. And some of your skin usually comes along with it. So the first time, it was painful, but not that big a deal. The 15th time, it started to get a little annoying.
But fortunately, we were all young and idealistic, and we didn't know anybody. When I wasn't in special effects makeup, I was still beaten up, I was still covered with blood, still had a stump. Obviously, you've got to now pretend that your arm is this long, not this long. But if you just tuck this in, your wrist is moving. Your wrist wouldn't be moving. So we had to put a metal bar, tape around that, put a sock around that, and then put a flat surface on top of that. And then the trick was to just tuck it in, so it never stuck out further than my regular other wrist.
Evolution of Henrietta happened because I read in the script that it's a rotting dead lady in the cellar walking around after ash. I did a couple of sketches in pastel on gray paper of a very skinny, emaciated dead lady with breasts rotting off, but you could see her rib cage, and clearly a skeletal individual. And my intention was to cast the skinniest actress we could for this. Then Sam saw my sketch and he goes, "That's great. However, this character is going to be put through such torture, and I want my brother to play the part." I explained to Sam, well, we can't take away what's there. We're going to have to add on, and to do that, why don't we make a big fat dead woman, then we can carve down from there, and Sam went for that idea.
Sometimes when you eat too much, that happens. But look at me. I'm just like my wife. I am my wife. You should see my husband. He's hideous. I don't feel too good. I think I gotta sit down.
Yeah, the Henrietta suit probably was the most complicated thing and most uncomfortable makeup on the film. Kind of a big experiment at the time. And then he had, all the various pieces that went over it that Mark sculpted.
Come to me!
All those guys working on me took, I believe it was, at bare minimum was 3 hours, and I think at the outset was like 8 hours. And it was very difficult in those days because prosthetics weren't as good as they are now. It was 8 or 9 pieces on your face, so that took a great deal longer and was laborious and exhaustive.
He was completely blind. That was the trick about those contact lenses that were a carryover of the design from the first movies. There's no hole in the pupil, so every single possessed character was completely blind. So we had to rehearse the scene without the lenses in, and then I'd have to go put the contacts in, and then we'd shoot. So the actors could not see whatsoever.
Teddy was a real trooper and miserable most of the time, and he had the contacts in. So, there was times when he crawls up out of the basement floor over the dirt, when he bursts up out of the floor. He'd do the whole take totally tortured because he was in pain because all the dirt got in his eyes, and he had contact lenses in. And we'd try to get the dirt out of his eyes and wash his eyes out and everything. And of course, Sam comes in and goes, he's a trooper, he can do it.
Teddy would do a scene, and then afterwards just my eyes are burning. It's like, yeah, you're okay, buddy. Don't be a baby, friend.
So yeah, it was hard, and I passed out a couple times and stuff. For some reason, you don't really care when you're that age, so.
And at one point, Ted's on the little rig to have him come shooting out of the trapdoor, and one of the guys lifting it pushed a little too hard, and Ted lost his balance.
Hold it.
As he started to fall, the suit just tore all the way across. So we ended up having to sit there and super glue the suit back together.
people still, it's legendary talking about that shot of Henrietta floating in the air and you see the big rip, you know, in her butt. It's just like the suit's just wide open. It's like, hey, look at that, you know.
Teddy did a fantastic job and had to endure a tremendous amount of pain and agony from this very hot, sweaty suit that collected his, you know, gallons of his sweat every day.
He would just have sweat pouring out of his feet. You know, we'd take the suit off and there'd be like this milky sweat because it would mix with powder and it was like just leaking out everywhere.
That's the alien facehugger blood that came out of Ted's feet.
Later in the movie, when we get to the end sequence, when he had the harness on and everything, there's a trickle of sweat that's literally pouring out of his ear in the movie. It was so uncomfortable for him to have it removed that if you were the king of the painless makeup remover for that day, then you win. So it was always a contest to see who could not rip Ted's flesh off.
So Ted, how does it feel to be stuck in that costume all day?
I guess it's inexplicable. It's beyond your wildest nightmares.
But in the end, worth it, because those guys made one of the most enduring monsters of recent filmdom. So I felt kind of honored to, you know, have that as my very first professional job.
I mean, like with Linda, you know, we had a polyfilm and latex jointed body and when her head's cut off, and I was laying on a skateboard, and the special effects guy, Vern Hyde, had these tubes up there that were pumping out the smoke, but it was like tobacco smoke, and literally like tobacco juice was pouring on me, kicking the door open, puppeting, you know, Linda and all this nonsense, running around. Bruce, you know, chopping her up, and we're spurting blood, and there's tobacco smoke coming out, and you know, you wear that stuff like war paint, you know, when you're younger. Now I'm like, oh, I would never do that. I think one of the hardest things was actually keeping Rob Tappert, the producer, out of our room after we were wrapped. And there was a couple times they broke into our room. It's like Sam was like, you know, we'd be wrapped for the day and we'd go, and then Sam would like, oh, you know, I need a shot of the Linda head, you know. Rob broke into the room, took the head and shot with it. And there's actually a shot in the movie where Linda's head pops up. You see the hair is pinned up. So it wasn't ready. We hadn't finished doing it, you know. And so I remember seeing it. We were really, really angry that they did that. They broke into our room. So we booby-trapped the room after that. And we had like, Mike Tursick had built this cradle. And we had a big water balloon in it. And the rope, there was like a line tied to the door. So if you opened it, it would release it and the water balloon would smash into your chest. And we got Rob Tappert real good once because he broke into our room again and did it. And bam, got covered in water. And I think they stayed out of our room after that.
When it came to the demise of Evil Ed, he was supposed to get the top of his head chopped off, and which he does. I mean, they filmed it. He gets the top of his head chopped off, which reveals a tiny little brain inside, which I want to say was Mark Sjostrom's idea. There's like a tiny little brain with all this like kind of like cobwebbing, because the idea that it gets the top of his head chopped off, and he's still running around, you know, whatever, until Bruce Campbell literally just chops him to pieces.
Start up that chainsaw. Head it here. We're gonna slice him.
We made 2 animatronic heads of Evil Ed. One was a whole head, which is the one that swallows the hair, when bites out her hair and swallows the hair. Also, there was a section of head that was on the ground that had a cable control that had like a working eye and a brow that moved around. And they had built a section of stage with holes in it that they had stuck arms and things in and made them up to match Rick's hands all flopping around on the ground.
We actually shot that sequence, and none of that made it into the movie.
Yeah, I guess it was too much.
Like, really? Evil Dead 2? Like, what, that's over the top?
Back then, we were having too much fun to actually, you know, think that there was a bad day on the film. And we were like kids having a good time making a horror film with, you know, with the crew that was going to go on to make a lot of movies, you know.
They rented us a house. We called it the Texas Chainsaw Massacre House, and I kid you not, the guy that built the Chainsaw House in Texas built this house.
It was literally standalone in a field with giant grass about this tall. It was our frat house. You know, we all lived together. Me, Bob, Mike Tursick, and Sjostrom.
And then literally down a little ways was the Friday the 13th barn. I'm like, dude, this is insane. We're literally living in a horror movie.
Each of us had a room, no air conditioning. I literally had a fan at the bottom of my bed blowing air through the room.
And it would get so hot, I would take my sheets, put them in ice water, and then lay them on top of me in the bed all night and just sit there. And Greg and I went to the store and we bought these little fans and we screwed them to the bed so there was constant air blowing on us. Or else we couldn't sleep. It was misery, mosquitoes, everything. But no matter what, it was fun, all right? It was fun as hell.
We just didn't care. It was like, we were working on Evil Dead 2, you know? We were working on the sequel to the most ferociously original horror film ever made. So as far as we were concerned, it was a lot of fun.
5 makeup effects guys living in a house. I mean, it was insanity, you know? And one being Mark Sjostrom, who by far was one of the funniest people on earth. I mean, he would do shit that was really hilarious. And
he's kind of fun to work with because he has a lot of fun in the shop. We'd shoot these little movies.
But I changed my mind! Shut up, bitch!
Hi, welcome to Bob and Howard's free abortion clinic. That's Bob. And that's Howard. And we're ready to abort you!
Imagine if the guys that are on the show, Jackass, were makeup effects artists. And I think you begin to get it. It was like that kind of camaraderie. It was that kind of humor. It was that kind of level of screwing around. I mean, we all got our work done, but there was a lot of horseplay, let us just say.
Again? Yeah.
No, don't come in. We're smashing things.
And they had gotten us a station wagon. That was our first car. And it was a total piece of crap. And we trashed it to no end. Literally driving, doing donuts and riding over railroad ties. And
at one point it broke down and we left it in the middle of the street and walked to work.
And then we got another car and that got destroyed. And you know, you just don't give makeup effects guys in the 80s their own vehicle and trust them with anything, you know. And
if you walked in the makeup lab, you'd look on the right and we had, you know, head replicas, Henrietta suit, Bruce Campbell head, and whatnot. If you looked on the left, we had a whole wall full of very realistic water pistols. That was back in the days when it was legal to go to Toys R Us and get like an M16 that looked like a real M16 or an Uzi. And when we needed to blow off steam, we'd go in these massive water fights.
So silly. It was so much fun though.
And back then it was very different than it is today, mind you. I mean, now we actually have businesses and it's very structured and you know, it's still fun, but it's not like the old days. And when we worked for Sjostrom, it was complete hilarity 24/7.
The last 2 weeks, Howard and Bob and Greg had all gone to work on Creepshow 2, so they left the project about 2 weeks early.
What happened was, because of my association with Laurel Entertainment and George Romero and Richard Rubenstein, they had called and asked if we were available. So I left and went directly from North Carolina right to New York to work on Creepshow 2. So I didn't really, I mean, I may have left a week early, but by then, all of our gags were finished.
So it kind of wound down to fewer and fewer people and less to shoot, and finally we did the exploding Pee-wee head, and that was it for us. I stayed to watch the final shot of the entire movie, which was the walls shooting blood and just destroying the whole set.
Got it.
You all right, Bruce?
That's the reason they shot it last, because it just decimated the place. And then got on an American Airlines flight 79, I remember, and was flying via Dallas, and I just pretty much collapsed in my chair and slept until I got to California.
It really was a kind of a grooming time for all of us to really kind of push what we knew to a higher level. And all of us, I mean, Howard Berger, Mike Tursick, all of us.
Evil Dead 2 was the proving ground for K&B because it was the first instance where Howard, Bob, and I had all worked together in a capacity where each of us complemented each other.
Yeah, I mean, it was a great experience. From the first day to the last day was a blast. And it's definitely one of my most favorite films I've worked on because the experience was just so fantastic.
But it was a wild ride. Still is.
Hello. We're about to film a very dangerous stunt. Bruce Campbell is about to crash through these steps over there.
Oh. Hi, Bruce.
Hi, Greg.
Sam and I have a good symbiotic relationship. You know, he's crazy, and I guess I'm willing to put up with his craziness.
Action!
You okay, Bruce?
Very nice. All right.
You know, he has to figure out how to get a scene done, and they were all very complicated, very involved.
I think we were all very impressed with how young he was. I remember someone saying he was like Hitchcock. He had every shot lined up, what he wanted, how, you know, he had it already in his mind how he wanted it to be. He was a very clear, very even-keeled director.
And he's just a slightly bigger-than-life character who is playing the part of a director at the same time he's directing. All right, you people, let's go. We got a big scene to shoot today, a lot of work.
It's interesting because I think that it kind of sets a tone on set, because it's like, this guy's here on business. I mean, he wants to have a good time, but he's here for business, but yet he'll say the craziest things.
My idea here is to drill 2 holes into the net rod. Then, ow! It's hot, Vern. Then...
He wants what he wants, he gets what he gets, but he does it in a very charming way. He doesn't remember anybody's name, so everyone is pal, buddy, sir, or ma'am.
Scene 500, take 1.
This could be very exciting. Okay, ready? And action.
He really left characterizations up to us, or that was my experience of him. I think he cast very carefully, and he knew sort of what he was looking for in the casting, but he never really talked to me about sort of how he wanted me to play something or what he wanted me to do with it. He really left that up to me, and I very much appreciated that.
Now! Exit.
I've known the man for 25, 30 years. I still don't know what to make of Sam. It's one of the most interesting people you ever want to meet in your whole life. He's obviously a true genius. He's incredibly dedicated to his work, and he loves to torture his actors.
Let's do it. First position.
Do we get a commentary on this one?
Sure. This is the evil hand grabbing Drake's face, and it's very obscure. Ready? And action.
Sam is a director who favors performances that are very bold but very honest. That's what he likes. He likes incredible specificity in his actors, but he doesn't want phoniness from them. So that's a pretty hard and rare kind of a performance to be able to give. But he picks actors for that ability.
You burn, you burn, you burn in hell.
Now give me sweet. I was once sweet Henrietta, so young and beautiful. Look at me now.
Look at me now.
Give me that. And action.
I was once sweet Henrietta, so young and beautiful. Look at me now.
Okay. Now give me, I used to make the most beautiful jams and pastries when I was young.
I used to make the most beautiful jams and pastries when I was younger.
Sam Raimi is one of the most imaginative directors I've ever worked with. Where he draws his reference and his inspiration from there are so many different, diverse areas.
He's so intelligent and so fun and funny. And who knew that he was hilarious?
Someone that had worked with Sam in Michigan years before told me, they said, the secret to Sam Raimi is that he keeps trying to make Three Stooges movies.
Hey, what are you doing here? Hey, why you?
He loves the Three Stooges, which it shows. His sense of humor really shows in the movies. But I love the fact that it can go from really funny to terrifying within a span of a couple seconds.
And it was then that I think I got a sense of Sam Raimi and what this was. That's when the light bulb went off. Like, okay, there's a little irony here. There's a little. This is not a traditional, Halloween or Friday the 13th horror movie. It's either going to be bizarre and I don't know what I'm doing, or this is going to be pretty cool. And when I met him, that irony and that sense of whimsy, I think, that childlike sense of, hey, we're making a movie, was still there.
We're about to shoot a terrifying scene of Evil Dead. We'll have a monster floating. Okay. Another will be chained in the cellar. I hope and pray they won't get free.
He just put it together. And he had Bruce coming together, too. That was the other thing. Because it's not just Sam, it's Bruce and Sam, right? I mean, you could argue he is Sam's De Niro. Just, I mean, they get it. They have a secondhand language that, they've done so much work together. They just understand each other.
However, with a slazy daisy.
By the daisy mazel.
With the pleasure.
Should be daisy peasy.
Especially with daisy lazy.
You put your hands in there and goes up on the blazing, goes across the face of pesos.
Is sex with the season on the pleasure.
Most indubitably pleasing.
It's not for two spaces. And with these pleasure, you've got to make sure to get on lasers. Season?
That's a razor weed's basil.
He could yell at me and abuse me, and I knew what he meant. I didn't take it personally. It wasn't like that at all. There's a lot of joking around. Sam is a real prankster. He's a real joker.
We're about to shoot a very dangerous stunt with Bruce Campbell. We've attached a line to his throat.
Yes, I will be lying on my stomach.
He's usually lying.
Yes, and they're going to be hooking me up through my skin. I've got to go now, Sam. They're going to hook me up.
Good luck to you, Bruce.
Thanks,
Good luck.
Sam. We know this is very dangerous.
I hope you can survive this.
Thank you.
And 3, 2, 1, action! Cut it!
Anytime I had the camera on them behind the scenes, they would ham it up,
Who are we going to get to? Who are we going to get to do the bladder makeup again?
I don't know. It seems like we could get almost anybody because it couldn't possibly be worse than the other stuff with that line and everything.
It was awful.
Oh.
You go to set every day, and he's like a kid in a candy store. And, if you give him 5 things, he wants to use all 5 things now. So how many Deadites do I have? Yeah, I got 10. I'm going to use all 10.
He comes from a magician background. So I think his theory is I'm going to hit you with all kinds of tricks, sleight of hand.
Oh, hello. We're about to shoot the Linda chainsaw sequence. She's going to come buzzing to the door there. And then she'll come back to a point over here.
Wait, where'd he go? Down there.
Just a little film joke.
Yeah.
We were very impressed, the actors and I were very impressed that he was so kind of cool. He was very sort of cool. Of course, those were the years when everybody smoked nonstop. So he went through at least a pack of cigarettes every 2 or 3 hours. It was pretty impressive.
The cool thing was Sam had so many definite ideas, very specific. That was the wonderful thing about Sam. You always knew what he wanted because he was never ambiguous about it. He knew exactly what he wanted. He knew how to get it. He knew cameras and lenses and filmmaking better than any director I've ever worked with.
This is a plate shot.
I love reading Sam's scripts and then seeing how important things like camera angles and how important sound effects are to him, because he really uses every single medium he can to heighten the experience of being trapped in this cabin.
And a lot of times we sat on set, and watched Sam Raimi do stuff and scratched our heads. We're like, how's this gonna work? Like Sam would get on a sound blanket, with the camera, the little IMO between his legs, and they drag him across the floor. And I'm like, I look at Greg, I'm like, really? And then we see the footage, like, that was great. You know, it's so low tech, but it works out fantastic. So a lot of things like that, and just seeing the resourcefulness of Sam Raimi.
Action, which is our cue for the vines.
He really put it together visually on this thing. I mean, you could tell. And he dreamt up rigs, and, you know, he challenged his crew, and, you know, he pushed them, but everyone wanted to be there. They all wanted to be part of it. And that's the very unique thing about Sam. He's always had that. You'll follow him anywhere, you know, because you know you're going to do something that's worthwhile.
What we plan to do is have the head vomitos, or expel great quantities of liquid.
You see Mr. Howard and his magic plunger?
The green fluid will come out. Don't be frightened. It's only through the magic of pictures that the effect of the terror will take place.
The magnitude of his success surprises me because Sam does not want to compromise his beliefs and his dreams for what he thinks they want. Your talented people are going to want to have a bite of you, so I guess he let them have a little nibble.
Evil Dead 2 was the first time we worked with Sam Raimi, but it wasn't the last. And it was always really fantastic to get a call from Sam Raimi. And we always said, if Sam called us in the middle of the night and said, hey, okay, buddies, come on over, we're going to shoot this movie in my mom's backyard, we would be there in a heartbeat. Like, we'd do anything Sam asked.
And his sensibilities have never changed, which is what I love about him. He still has this sort of gleeful, maniacal giggle when something really outrageous happens.
Sam still has that energy, you know, and I do believe, like, with all these amazing, gigantic, $200 million movies Sam has done, he's most happy doing little, low-budget horror movies.
Welcome to the world of movie magic. This is the flying head rig.
And no matter what, every time I look at Sam Raimi, I see that guy, you know, who, you know, does these giant films, but if I gave him a hammer made of rubber and he could hit somebody in the head with it over and over again, he would be the happiest guy on earth.
Don't be alarmed, because you see, it's only a picture.
The first Evil Dead, we were very connected to it. It was Bart Pierce and Tom Sullivan doing stop motion and gore effects in his basement for 3 months. Evil Dead 2, things were happening more at the same time.
Clearly the makeup effects was on a whole nother scale. And I didn't really want to do that. I wanted to try the stop motion thing.
They had me set up a room for Tom Sullivan to work in. He was coming to do some of the animation shots and the Book of the Dead props and things, and the dagger, and so I got that room set up, and Tom was the first effects person to show up.
So I got to work and I had tons to do. I did the opening with the book coming in. It was written by the Dark Ones, and I built a stop motion animation book. It had the pages in it, and the stop motion book had wooden covers, and the covers were hinged and also had ball and socket joints so that I could animate those. And each page had 2 pieces of paper over aluminum wire so that I could animate the paper flipping back and forth. There's a shot of the book being written, and for that I hand drew I think the first 4 or 6 pages, and then I would ink it in, do a little bit and then click a frame and stand back and do a little bit more and click a frame. Then Sam wanted the pages to turn as each page was completed, but to accelerate. So the next 4 or 6 pages, I had the artwork already done and cut out, and I would just glue it on with contact cement, take a frame, glue another picture down, so go pop, 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 flip. And then the last of the pages were already hand-drawn. The whole book was hand-illustrated. I needed a cameraman for the stop motion, and they got Larry Larson, an experienced animator, and he had this beautiful 35mm Mitchell camera. And for you film fans out there, that's what Ray Harryhausen used. So that was really cool.
Larry had to leave on a family emergency, and that left me and Tom. So here I was, an 18-year-old kid, and I ended up photographing some of Tom's animation, which ended up being the opening of the film with the ghosts flying out of the vortex.
I had made 2 round 4-foot diameter vortexes, put them on a big Lazy Susan and would spin them and take the brush and just drive it to the outside, and then you'd get like a real easy made vortex.
Originally, the film was going to open with a recap of the first Evil Dead, which it still kind of does, but it kind of doesn't too. But originally there was going to be some recaps of the meltdowns and things, and there was a half-scale sculpture of Sam Raimi who was going to be playing Scotty.
And I think it got too expensive, so they just kind of tossed it out and recondensed it.
We did end up shooting the book burning in the fireplace, but I think that was the only shot for the recap sequence that we filmed.
I know for a fact that I recommended Doug Beswick for the Dancing Linda. And it was clearly an element where the wider shots would have to be stop motion, because we can't have a dummy or an actress with a head removed dancing in full shots.
The choreographer, Tam Warner, designed a dance sequence. We photographed that dance sequence on 35mm film, and we sent this raw 35mm footage to Sam Raimi, and Sam cut together the dance sequence. Basically, the scene was completely built in live action first. They sent me the cut footage, and then we went to work matching that up, basically frame by frame. And then I had a crew building the miniature set. The supervisor there was Jim Belahovic.
When Doug Beswick called me up to work on Evil Dead 2, I had already worked on Aliens, The Thing. So my skills were starting to get more refined. My direct job when Doug Beswick hired me was to build what we call the cabin set. So I had to build this cabin and trees that for an animation setup were going to be a challenge, because if Doug would reach into the set, nothing could move.
The animation was very challenging because this was, actually trying to duplicate a performance. So it was a bit challenging in that respect, and it was all tabletop. So it's a pretty slow process. I would say I probably got maybe a frame every 5 minutes, That would be at the peak where you're working your fastest. So it's very slow and tedious. And there's no going back. If you make a mistake, you basically have to start over.
My job on the film when it started was just to do the crawling hand scene, or scenes. And I did fly down there to do the one long shot, because we had no way to duplicate that entire room. And the rest of them were done on a miniature, not a miniature, but a rebuilt set to match a small section of the real set. And all the other cuts were done in my studio. I basically had to match the paint job, get the armature made, get that set in the mold right, do the foam cast, and then took it down on set for them to approve. Basically, I just stood around most of the day and watched everybody else shoot scenes and had a good time. And then once they shut down for the day, somewhere around midnight, I went in and shot for about 3 hours to do the hand crawling across the room. And then after we did that, they just had so many effects on the film that Sam or Rob said, could you help us out with some other shots? And that turned into the neck growing and head changing transformation scene, and a couple other scenes of the bust of Henrietta lunging at the camera, and then the full body puppet with Ash swinging the chainsaw and stuff, a couple of stop motion cuts of that. So it turned into more than initially it was supposed to be.
A lot of the stuff that Tom and I were dealing with were, there were things like the Henrietta head coming up out of the floor.
Mike Tersick did the sculpture, and at that point, they hadn't put Ted Raimi in the Henrietta makeup yet. So he sculpted it so it looked just like the actress who was playing Henrietta as a human, but she doesn't look anything like Ted Raimi as Henrietta, as a Deadite. And so there's that little jarring thing, but it's also so quick you don't notice.
We spent an entire, probably a 5 or 6 hour night on set while everything was clear, with Bruce just doing the sequence where he sees the evil for the first time incarnated in the flesh, and the flowers die in the flower pot behind him, and his hair streaks white. And we had built a rig that held Bruce steady so that Tom could animate the white streak in his hair and we had a propane torch that we would intermittently hit the flowers with in the flower pot so they would slowly wilt and fall over as the shot progressed. Animation just has a great look that you can't beat, and there's just something really weird about it when you start doing it with real people.
Sam wanted a great scene at the finale of a flying deadite attacking a bunch of knights. Well, they had a big, long sequence. It was like a real Harryhausen battle with a monster sequence where it was going to fly in and attack 20 or so knights on horseback and knock a couple of them off their horses, and then spot a woman running with a child, and it would fly at him, and that's when Ash would show up and with a shotgun and blow its head apart.
For the exploding head, the original idea was glass plates with paintings, basically. So it was going to be a series of paintings of the head exploding. For reference, Tom decided we'll sculpt some little heads on cantaloupes and we'll take them out in a field, and I'll set up my Super 8 camera and film it, and we'll shoot them with a shotgun. I think I shot the first head. Tom sets it up, and we load up the shotgun again, and he shoots the second head, and the kickback sends the lever for cracking the barrel open deep into his hand. And as I recall, he needed 6 stitches after that.
I'm not sure what happened exactly, but Sam decided he didn't want his special effects guys on the set, which I found to be really ominous. So when we saw the footage, of course, it wasn't usable, and there were only a couple of shots that were, and that's what became of the sequence. It goes by so fast, most people can't even remember it. But that was going to be my ticket to greater adventure in stop motion. What a heartbreaker.
Looking back at working on Evil Dead 2 it was a good time, and it was a magical time working with animators who I wish we could have continued working on animated films like that.
In retrospect, I would say that it was one of the most, interesting projects, fun projects to work on, because it seemed to have a, real creative energy about it. With building everything was kind of hands-on back then.
I'd love to see stop-motion sequences back in the features. It was fantastic, and it was not perfectly real, but it was wonderfully real, if you know what I mean. And those creatures, if you gave them the time and the import on the film and didn't cut away to mechanicals and just let the animation creature be the star, I think they were very powerful.
I thought it was neat that it turned into a stop-motion film. I love stop-motion, and there's just something cool about the way it looks, and I think it works really well for fantasy and would work well for Lovecraft and things like that. I'm also glad that I'm kind of the guy who introduced Sam Raimi to stop-motion animation, so I was very happy with that.
The first Evil Dead, the problems were tough because we didn't know what we were doing. There was no unions involved, and we didn't know anything. We sort of made it up and learned a lot, only looked back later and went, wow, what a nightmare that was. Second shoot was a huge nightmare, so we were like, there's got to be a better way to do this.
I don't even know if Sam remembers this or not, but it is in fact the case of before he went to go make Evil Dead 2, he came over and he brought over a bottle of scotch. And he and I drank this bottle of scotch and discussed production. Because so far he had made 2 films that the production was insane. I said, you gotta do storyboards or a shot list or something. You've gotta let everybody in on what it is you intend to do. And he did, and since then he's become a very big proponent of storyboards. I mean, his storyboards are hysterical because he draws stick people.
He would draw storyboards, and we were like, what is this? And he goes, it's the evil hand, it's possessed. And we're like, you know, okay, but I guess we're not taking these literally. But what's great is he conveyed his shots that way, and that's really all a director needs to do. He doesn't need to be a sketch artist, he just needs to be able to convey the shots and what's going to happen in them.
Eugene Schluglitz was actually our initial director of photography.
Who was the director of photography who shot all the night stuff and all the stuff in the woods and at the cabin.
And of course, you know, we had the North Carolina crew, which is, when it was 3:30, I'm going to go home. So no, but we have all this stuff to do. Time for me to go home. And that was what we were run up against all the time.
And we had, I guess, what you would call the Night of the Long Knives, where we were forced to, because of their sort of uncooperative nature of this whole crew, we fired in the course of a weekend the entire camera crew, grip, and electric department, because they were questioning everything that we did. Moving the camera here, lighting there, and we're like, wait a second, guys, this isn't normal. We'll tell you where to do stuff, where to light. Don't worry about it. It's not your problem. And so it became just not a good situation, and we replaced a third of our crew over the course of a weekend.
And then Peter Deming came on, so by the time we got to the location of the soundstage, Peter was the DP.
Yeah, it was sort of a surprise to me. I mean, I had heard about Sam, I had heard about the first Evil Dead. I hadn't actually seen it. Got on a plane on a Friday and was shooting on Monday. We talked briefly about the look that he wanted. We looked at what had been shot already and just sort of took it from there. There wasn't a lot of time to get acclimated.
It was a difficult situation where we had big demands on the crew. And I remember Sam giving a speech when the new crew came in on Monday. And Sam gave them a patent speech, essentially saying, okay, you've seen what we're up against here. You've seen what we have to do. You understand the challenges here. So anybody else who needs to go now.
I knew then, it was interesting, I knew then that Sam was going to do what it has to take to make movies. Because usually when you're into it and you're going, you don't uproot like a major part of your show.
This is the tough side of Sam. He's a real sweet guy, real nice guy, but he's got to get his movie made. Nothing's going to stop him from getting his movie made. No crew member, no actor, no nothing. And I'll tell you, the rest of the crew really stepped up. When they saw that happen, they were like, whoa, we see that this guy's very serious about what he does. So everybody kind of was really quiet and just got to work.
And I remember, I think it was the second day of shooting, we did the shot where the camera starts out in the woods and comes rushing towards the back of the cabin and bursts through all through doors and then goes right into Bruce's mouth. And Sam wasn't sure about me. It's like my second day on the film. And so he did a couple takes, and so he said, do you want to try it? And I said, yeah, I want to try it. So I think I did about 3 or 4 takes. And then when we saw the dailies the next day, I think he preferred, I don't want to speak for Sam, but I think he preferred my takes. Then we sort of developed a level of trust from that day forward.
I mean, he really came to play. I mean, anything Sam could throw at him, he would do.
Sam has a shot of Ash being swept up by this evil force, and it's spinning him around. So we had to find a stretch of road that was at least a mile or 2 long, probably 2 miles, with no bends in it.
That shot took a whole day, that one shot. Bruce was basically strapped into a mechanism that was mounted on top of a crane that we drove down a road.
So it was a device that Sam could control. I could rotate this way, clockwise, counterclockwise, faster, slower. And the special effects guy, Vern Hyde, would come up and go, yeah, Bruce, what'd you have for breakfast this morning? I'm like, why do you care? He goes, well, because it's probably going to come out, and I was just curious how much you ate, because I'm going to be down below. I'm like, wow, that doesn't sound good.
The rig went really slow, and we shot at like 2 or 3 frames a second.
So we're moving down this road, being pulled by a crane as I'm going up into the trees and down and around, And there are people from below with branches.
And would just walk by and smack Bruce with the branches and then go to the back of the line and smack him with branches. So that whole scene.
It's a ridiculous setup. I mean, it's just absurd. And that was one day. We took an entire day to get 5 seconds of film.
The thing was that Sam has so many tricks, you know, that we just always needed to quite, you know, make sure we understood what Sam wanted and what his storyboards were, and that we were able to deliver whatever those shots were. There's like a couple mirror shots, you know, where we had Bruce in the mirror in a makeup, and then a double, you know, over his shoulder, that gag, which works really well.
Every day was just a challenge to figure out how to accomplish what he needed. He wants the evil entity to be, it's a POV shot, roaming through the woods. Very wide angle lens, so you see everything, so you have to hide everything. You're seeing everything, and it's like a fisheye almost.
It's like a 14 millimeter or something, so it's a pretty wide focal length, and you can get away with a lot of motion. You know, it's very forgiving, but yeah, I mean, just basically handheld and low to the ground and just running.
So he wants the evil entity to go from behind his Oldsmobile, break the back windshield, go through the middle of the car, break the front windshield, and go out across the hood. Well, that was called the Ramo Cam. What that was is a cart with wheels that you could push with a long pole, probably 20 feet. It was a metal pole with handles at the very end. You mounted the camera at the end, and there were these puncture things right by the lens of the camera. It also had to teeter, because Sam wanted to go from the ground up over the back of the hood, through the back, and through the hood. So it had to raise in elevation. So we had to take where we hit the trunk, can't use it. We hit the rearview mirror, wipe the rearview mirror out. We tried it actually. There were several different attempts to shoot the one shot. We had one rig, it was failure, failure, failure. This rig ain't gonna work. We wound up shooting it again several weeks later. And finally, I remember everyone cheered. We finally got the one shot. They came up, they rammed it through, shoved it all the way through. It worked. We were like, oh, thank God.
We had a lens attachment, which is, I guess, sort of passé now, but actually it's still effective. It's called a mesmerizer, and you can crush things this way, or you know, horizontally or vertically, and you can spin it. And a lot of those shots were done at a frame a second or 2 frames a second. You know, just a really radical frame rates. Days would go by and we wouldn't shoot 24 frames a second. And the poor sound guy would just sit in despair because he didn't really have anything to do sometimes.
Sam was very specific in the script about which cameras would be used, at which film speed, if the film was run in reverse. So reading it, there was no question how he was approaching things, and it made it very clear for the camera department and for me how it was going to be done. And I don't think I ever had any concerns or questions because it was clear, oh, we're doing this as a reverse shot. I know what I need to do.
Most of my best acting was done in reverse. We had a ping pong ball type eyeball, a hard eyeball, on a dowel.
Action. Let her fly. Fly ball, eyeball. Scream it, shoot the camera a little more.
And then the reverse camera work, I had to, it was a gelatin eyeball. Nasty.
So we put the eyeball in her mouth and have a string on it, and she'd have to learn how to react. Like they'd pull it out, and then she'd have to pretend like she was seeing it coming because they were going to reverse it. And it's one of the most effective scenes in the movie, I think.
One effect, I think, that worked really well in some, which was not just a makeup effect, was when Cassie Wesley is being raped by the tree. That was a very clever effect because it involved makeup effects, art department, trick photography, a certain amount of stunt work just for that one shot.
But what we ended up doing was shooting it in reverse. We had a fake platform with the ground moving the opposite direction.
I mean, that was just a carpet, you know, with twigs and stuff glued onto it. We pulled it really, really fast.
They had Cassie suspended above the floor, so she was about 6 inches off the stage floor. And if a camera is filming above her, which it was, it would look like she's being dragged along the floor of the forest. So while that rig was all in place, we made her up and we literally took these latex vines and lubed them up with KY, and we stuffed them in as far as they would go until she was bulging like a chipmunk.
Do you think the vines would beginning here, then you should look below, ready?
And then on action, we would just pull them out. So you pull them out and they start coming off. And then when you reverse the film, they all look like they're going through.
Go. So how was it, Cass?
Oh, it was like wonderful.
Was it good for Dude.
It was good for me. Now put it back in, boys, just like they were.
I mean, it was gags like that that just made me really enjoy working on the movie, even though it was gruesome out there.
It wound up being a difficult long shoot, but it was not the nightmare shoot. It was one of our best planned, best orchestrated shoots.
I don't think anybody raised their voice on that set the entire time we shot. I don't remember anybody getting angry. I don't remember anybody yelling or screaming about anything. We just had a good time.
I don't think we did a lot of reshooting on Evil Dead 2, but if we wanted to, it wasn't that big of a deal, you know, because we were sort of this concise unit of people.
I think with a DP and Sam, that's the most important relationship on a set. You know, I mean, he ran with that camera, he had his crew, you know, rigging up stuff the way Sam wanted it. And so I think Sam finally got a guy that went, okay, he's willing to go where I'm willing to go. And, you know, obviously they've been working again.
Yeah, I was delighted to hear from Sam when he was preparing Drag Me to Hell. So we got to reteam on that, and now we're doing Oz the Great and Powerful. Now, I look back on Evil Dead 2, and I think there was a certain naivete in our approach in that there was nothing that we couldn't really do. You know, if we set our minds to it, we could do it.
We didn't have any interference in the editing process because we cut it in Michigan, but Dino De Laurentiis was part of it. And we met with him a couple of times, and we had a screening with him a couple of times. But Sam kept it in Michigan for that reason, is to be able to cut his version first. They knew exactly what they wanted. They knew how they wanted to have it put together. Sam knew exactly how the dailies were going to go. I mean, he's an incredible director. He was cutting it in his head while he was shooting it, which is, you know, really impressive to me. I was very nervous. We had a moviola, a stand-up moviola, and they have teeth that go through that you put the film through. And I accidentally caught my fingers in the teeth, and my fingers went through the teeth and kind of started bleeding a little bit, and I got it, and I was so bummed out because it was on the film. And I'm laughing, and my assistant editors, of course, are getting a big kick out of this. And I turn around, and Sam looks like he's gonna toss it. And I said, Sam, are you okay? And he said, yeah, you know, the sight of blood really bothers me.
We didn't really want to deal with the ratings people. You know, they didn't like us, and we thought that, you know, showing a film like that to a bunch of people who are part of the PTA just didn't seem like it was gonna work.
We didn't try to get any kind of a rating. That was not an issue. It was just putting the movie together, and the MPAA wanted us to make changes, and Sam didn't want to make them.
We were contracted to deliver an R-rated movie with Dino, but it wasn't going to happen.
We were never going to get an R, and I don't think anybody really cared about that.
We found this with Evil Dead, that if your movie's unrated, some newspapers will not take the ad, and some TV stations will not show your 2-minute trailer because they just don't know what it is. So we had to form Rosebud Releasing, and we actually filmed the logo of the rose at the beginning of the movie. Sam Raimi photographed that, and we created this logo like it was this company, but we created a false distribution company for some strange reason to get around all this various stuff.
Now, from the creator of Evil Dead comes Evil Dead 2. Evil Dead 2, Dead by Dawn.
We all snuck into a test screening Bob, Greg, and myself ran to the theater and waited in line, and we saw Sam and Rob, and we're like, oh, they can't see us, so we'll get kicked out. So we kind of hid as they walked past, and we went in and watched it, and afterwards we walked down and we saw them. We're like, that movie rocked, that was awesome. We loved it, you know? And it was really, really fun. You know, we really loved the movie.
I thought it was incredibly well done. It was very fast-paced, and the audience was really into it when I was there. So that was a big, you know, plus, and it made me feel like, I think this is really going to work.
I loved it. I thought it was great, though it was very hard to figure out if you were supposed to laugh or be scared.
I remember thinking, God, this is like a remake of the first movie, but it's funny, like really funny. And I was like, was this supposed to be funny? Because everyone around me is laughing, and I'm kind of going, is this supposed to be like this?
As the movie started to roll, I was starting to become kind of appalled at what I had worked on, and my friend was laughing beside me, and I was getting a little irate. I thought he was making fun, and I said, why are you laughing at this picture? And he goes, don't you get it? And I go, no, I don't understand. He goes, it's a dark comedy.
The reactions to that movie are really special because they just don't know how to do it. Should I laugh? Should I scream? I don't know what to do.
I would say that just the only thing that was sort of, that was not a disappointment, but it took a while before Evil Dead did become, you know, obviously what it is today.
Unfortunately with us, like Witchboard, I think beat us, you know, on opening day, which was fine, but I think, you know, overall and in retrospect, obviously Evil Dead 2 has done very well.
And I think that goes for a lot of films, you know, that stand out, that don't, maybe are so different that, you know, they don't do as well at the beginning, but later on they actually come back and they become these classics, you know, that people look at and it's like, you know, that was very unique.
Nobody can ever pick what a cult classic is going to be. It's the same thing as a classic. It's just either it survives or it doesn't, and Evil Dead 2 really seems to have shown that it has legs.
Well, I'm always glad when people like these movies so much later, but I think hopefully it means that we put enough time and effort into it back at that time to make something that's not your standard horror movie.
8 or 9 years after the film came out, a friend of mine told me she was taking a class at NYU and they were spending about 6 weeks studying Evil Dead 2.
It's interesting that it continues to come up no matter where I am, no matter what I'm doing professionally, no matter, you know, what type of person I'm around. Somebody around me knows me, either recognizes me, knows somebody who knows me, who knew I did that. So it's been very unexpected.
The coolest thing for me is 25 years later to go to work where I work now, to be on the air, get off the air, and have somebody who just became a production coordinator who's 22 years old come up with a Sharpie and a Blu-ray of Evil Dead 2 and say, dude, would you sign that? Please? Is that cool? I'm like, really? Yeah? That's the greatest thing. That another generation and another generation is still enjoying this thing and still getting it. They're still along with us. And I think that's the coolest thing about the movie. It's like a great classic rock album or something. Next generation still loves it.
It's really nice to have been a part of something that has been so embraced by a genre, and I'm kind of tickled. 25 years later, Evil Dead 2 is still alive and kicking, and people are still loving it.
We gave our all for it. You know, I worked my ass off on that film for 6 months and put in a lot of effort, and we knew it all pay off in a big way. We didn't know how big, but I think everybody involved really gave it so much heart and soul.
To this day, I actually think it's Sam's best movie, but that's my own personal thing. It had everything I would want in a horror movie. It was funny, it was scary, it had energy. You had a star in the making with Bruce, and you had a great visual style.
Creatively, you know, it was great too because we were trying to do again a small budgeted movie, and I thought, you know, with the style that he shot it in and everything, all the gags worked perfectly in the film, you know.
It wasn't about perfection. We weren't making a perfect film, you know. Certainly there's tons of mistakes and hiccups through the whole film, but it adds to the fun of it. There's something about imperfections that work for film. It's something actually that I think a lot about, and how how it is nowadays, where movies are tailored to be perfect on every regards, and to me that makes them feel synthetic and not organic by any means. They've been so overworked and polished that they don't feel like real movies.
It's one of those things that I think that Hollywood would love to find the formula for that, but it's very elusive. It's just like all the planets seem to line up.
It felt like a bunch of kids making a movie in their basement. It really did. And that's what made it really fun. You know, there was no high pressure, there wasn't yelling, there wasn't, you know, studio involvement, there wasn't, you know, 500 people sitting on set telling you what it should be. It was Sam Raimi directing a movie about a bunch of goofy stuff with a bunch of goofy guys, and it was really, really fun.
So Evil Dead 2, of all the Evil Dead movies, still is the closest to my heart for being a functioning set, functioning production. We were better at what we could do, and it wasn't a disaster, and it made money. It kind of got me started in my own genre path. Evil Dead 2 always leaves a good taste in my mouth.
Groovy.